Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. Zach D Productions here, and I'm here for a top list video for you guys. This is my end of the year list 2021. Now some people might think it's a little too early for me to be making a list video like this, because I do realize that most people will probably be doing their end of the year list sometime in December. But for me personally, I've pretty much heard all the 2021 releases that I had any intentions on listening to this year. Now, of course, before making this list, I did want to check out a few other 2021 releases that did pique my interest a little bit and that I've been wanting to check out for a while now, so I did, of course, do that before making this list. So the first album up is Colors 2 by Between the Buried and Me, and Between the Buried and Me is a band that I've known about for many years now, and yeah, surprisingly enough, some of you might be very surprised to hear that since I never talk about them on the channel. But that's of course for a few reasons. They're not really a band that I really listen to these days like I did. I believe they were one of the first metal bands that I ever listened to back in the day, back in my first year of college, you know. That was back when I was really starting to get more into the metal genre. And I did really like the original Colors album when I first listened to that. And, you know, when I heard that Between the Buried and Me was coming out with a Colors Part 2, I was honestly kind of like, kind of not interested at first. Because I'm like, really, they're, you know, they don't got any other ideas. They're just going to continue what they did with the Colors album, which, you know, on paper doesn't sound like a bad idea. It doesn't, since Colors is one of their best albums. So you would think, you know, hey, that's a good thing. But the way I saw it at first was, okay, it seems like they're either just trying to live off past success, or they're just trying to get their old fan base back. And there are some people that do say that this is one of their best, if not their best album. Now, after listening to it, I don't know if I would say it's their best album, to be honest. I do like it. I do think it's a very good album. And I do think it's actually Between the Buried and Me's best album in a good number of years. And I think the whole band does a very good job at everything on this album. I mean, the instrumentals, they sound very good. The vocals, they sound good. It just seems like everything is kind of an improvement on this album. Colors 2 by Between the Buried and Me, I think it's a very solid album. But it's got to be at the bottom of the list for me personally. So, the next album up next would have to be Bayley's album, War Within Me. What a strong album this is. I was actually pleasantly very surprised by this album. Now, if you didn't know, Bayley was, I guess, a substitute Iron Maiden vocalist for a little bit back in the 90s with the X Factor and Virtual 11. So, yeah, I am very much aware of Bayley through those albums, and I never really bothered to check out Bayley's solo stuff. But, you know what? Someone recommended me to check out this album, War Within Me, and I have to say that it did pleasantly surprise me. I absolutely was definitely intrigued by the melodies throughout this album. A lot of these songs on this album, they're very memorable and definitely have some really good hooks to them and things like that. I mean, it offers all that stuff, and it's just really good sounding heavy metal. I mean, it really is. It's just really good. So, War Within Me by Bayley. This is an album that I wanted to mention here. So the next album that I want to talk about here is Imperial by the band Soen. Now, Soen is a supergroup, and yeah, pretty interesting band. Now, they might not be the easiest band to get into for some people. Now, one of the things that really drew me to this band was the guitar work. I think the guitar work is really outstanding. A pretty good band for a modern progressive metal band, I would say. But yeah, their latest album, Imperial, this was my first Soen album, the album that got me into the band. This album was also recommended to me. The next album that I want to talk about for this list is by the band Headless, and it is their album, Square One. Now, Headless is also a smaller band, a more underground band, but you know what? I do think that this band definitely deserves to be a lot more successful, a lot more popular, you could say. Of course, Dario is a very good guitar player as well, and I do believe that he was involved in Jeff Tate's projects. Of course, Jeff Tate from Queensryche formerly anyways. But yeah, Dario, definitely a great guy, and all the musicians definitely do a very good job here on this album, Square One, and the production is pretty decent for the most part. Alright, so the next album up is by the band At the Gates, and it is their album, The Nightmare of Being, and At the Gates is kind of an interesting band to me. They are, of course, one of the pioneers of the melodic death metal scene, and surprisingly, they were not a band that I really looked into that much. Even like a few years ago, back when I listened to this genre a lot. But, you know, I am willing to dive into this band's discography more, especially after this album, The Nightmare of Being, because I do think it's a very strong album. I do think that it's probably a step up from their last album, To Drink from the Night Itself, I believe it's called. And I believe that album actually made my end of the year list of the year that it came out as well. So, yeah. The Nightmare of Being, I do think, is a step up. The melody of the guitars throughout this album, I mean, I really do find intriguing. And it also, at the same time, does have this raw sound to it. This classic melodeath sound that I actually really do appreciate, for sure. So now here we are in the top 5. Now, at number 5, I gotta go with The Quest by the band Yes. Now, Yes is one of my favorite bands in the progressive rock scene, and yeah, definitely a great band. Of course, one of the most notable bands in the progressive rock genre. Definitely a really excellent band. In my opinion, I think The Quest is Yes's best album in a good number of years. I would even go as far to say that this is Yes's best album since 90125, which came out in the 80s, of course. So yeah, definitely a massive step up from the last few albums before this one. I mean, the instrumentation and just, you know, the heartfelt moments that you get on here, it's just so intriguing. I mean, definitely just some excellent musicianship, guitar work, vocals, of course. Yes's newest album, The Quest, very solid. So if you're someone that's not really a fan of modern day Yes, I would say give this one a chance, because once again, I do think it's their best album in a good number of years, so definitely a strong album. So at number 4, I got Aggression Continuum by the band Fear Factory. And yeah, what a strong album this is for sure, but this was unfortunately the last album with Burton C. Bell on vocals. I mean, he was, of course, one of the most notable members in Fear Factory. Either way, this album, I think it's really solid. Now, it's not their best work or anything, it's not their best album, but I still do think it's a very strong album for sure. Very good production, it's a very heavy album. Of course, some notable tracks would pretty much be all of the first half, especially with songs like Recode, Disruptor, the title track, and Purity. Those are very good songs. Very strong album. Check it out if you like industrial metal. So here we are at the top 3. Now, number 3, this is by one of my favorite bands in the metalcore genre. At number 3, I got In the Court of the Dragon by Trivium. This is a really great album, and I would even say that this is one of Trivium's best albums. There's just not a weak song from this album. I think all the songs are great. I think that this album, it definitely does a good job of pleasing all fans. You know, the people that like their more melodic stuff. I mean, of course, you know, if you want something very melodic that relies heavily on melody, of course you would like songs like The Shadow of the Avatar. But if you like something really heavy, maybe something similar to their older days like Ascendancy, I think the title track is a good song to check out if that's what you're looking for from Trivium. But yeah, and then of course the Phalanx sounds like it could be from the Shogun era. So you do get a good mixture of a lot of things in Trivium's discography on this album. I just think it's very solid. So In the Court of the Dragon by Trivium, what a great album. So at number 2, we got Senjutsu by Iron Maiden. And of course, Iron Maiden, they're legends, and Iron Maiden's latest album has to be within the top 5. I mean, it just has to be. Because, I mean, come on, it's Iron Maiden, and they're legends in metal, and they're, of course, one of the greatest metal bands of all time. But you know what? Senjutsu, I think, is excellent. It's a really great album, definitely a step up from their last album, The Book of Souls. A lot of very strong tracks from this album, for sure. Some of Iron Maiden's best work in a while. But yeah, if you claim to be a metalhead, haven't heard this album yet, and you want to just check out one of the greatest albums of the year, definitely check out this album, Senjutsu by Iron Maiden. Very great album. So, at number 1, you know, when this album was coming out, I actually had a very good feeling that this would be album of the year, at least for me personally. Now, I know some people will not agree with my opinion here because some people feel like the album was overhyped, but I think this album is excellent. I think the replay value is still strong with this album. I pretty much got no complaints with it nowadays, and this album definitely gets better with more listens. And my number 1 favorite album of 2021 is A View from the Top of the World by Dream Theater. Dream Theater are, of course, legends in the progressive metal genre, and they are one of my favorite bands, probably. I actually like this album a lot more now than it did the day it came out. I pretty much like all the songs from this album. Some songs I've been returning to a lot in recent time, especially songs like Answering the Call, Transcending Time, and Sleeping Giant. Those are really great songs that I've been returning to a lot recently. So yeah, A View from the Top of the World by Dream Theater. This is my number 1 favorite album of 2021. So let me know what you guys think. What are your favorite albums of the year 2021? Feel free to let me know in the comments. Also, let me know what you guys think of this list. Do you agree with my list? Have you heard any of these albums? Feel free to let me know. So with that being said, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day and take care.